Paint Care is all about keeping it simple for Oregonians. They make recycling leftover paint easy with convenient locations like your local paint store. And Paint Care has 3 simple rules for painting smarter and reducing waste. 1, you buy the right amount of paint for the job. 2, you use up what's left. And 3, recycle the rest. And you can do that by visiting paintcare.org/3 simple rules to learn more or find a paint drop-off site near you. It's just a few weeks until Halloween, which means it's time for all manner of eerie and spine-chilling events and entertainment. And did you know that Oregon has one of the most thriving horror fan communities in the country? Fans have even come up with a name for this cultural phenomena: Horror Oregon. Horror Oregon. Say that 5 times fast. And what this all means is that we put on a pretty amazing Halloween season. So today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about the best horror films that were shot here, underground local horror celebrities you've probably never heard of, some of the best Halloween-themed events happening this month, and so much more. Jack Rudo, founder of the horror fanzine The Stapled Spine, will be our tour guide through some of Oregon's weirdest and creepy happenings. Plus, he's sharing a personal ghost story. It's Wednesday, October 9th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Jack, so is it safe to say that Halloween is your favorite holiday?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. My birthday is the 22nd of October, which means that every year it was orange and black and monster stuff, but it's just far enough away from the holidays, so I get to enjoy both. Yeah, I don't know, monster movies and horror comics and stuff, and also being a child of the 80s, which was the golden era of all of that, really just kind of smacked me right between the eyes.
So when I first got your zine, Stapled Spine, I thought that you just waited every year and then you just did this bonkers zine once a year for Halloween because it says Happy Halloween on them, and it's, so I just assumed, but you're like, no. I do this all year long.
You know what? It's year round. It's actually easier. One, to get high level interviews and stuff when you tell them that this isn't for a blog or a website, it's for a physical paper zine. People think that's a cool novelty. And it's also easier to get all the spooky people off season because they're not busy on anything, appearances or anything like that. We have a horror Valentine's issue, an Easter issue. I mean, we publish about every 5 weeks, depending on how burnt out I am. But I'm fighting it this year. This year, we're going to have a good holiday issue. So, yeah.
Well, the whole theme of your zine, aside from Halloween and stuff, is horror. Mm-hmm. And you're discussing horror culture. Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting because I never thought that was a subculture that existed. And you're basically saying no, this is a thing, and Oregon is a hub for it. And I want you to explain to me why. I mean, especially a lot of us being I'm sorry, what now?
It's horror Oregon. It just is. It's our natural gray, damp, what everyone else thinks we are. We are. And one of the articles that I do, regular articles that I write in the zine and Staple Spine, is Made in Horror Oregon. And it is Oregon filmed horror films. In issue 18, we tracked down and spoke with Katie Rasmussen, and she was the location manager for 2022's Significant Other, which was a sci-fi horror thriller that was filmed all throughout Oregon and on our Oregon coast especially. She told me that the director and writer, the first thing they did for that film, Significant Other, was know it had to be in Oregon. And they live in New York. They came out here 2 summers before, on vacation with their family to the coast, and they knew that they just have to do something here because of how it looks and how it feels.
Yeah. I'm also curious as to if that is not a double-edged, but I noticed that a lot of moody films take place in Oregon. Mm-hmm. But then part of me is just we also have summer and it's gorgeous here. But, just we're not all just this one thing. But I remember I got sick once, Jack, and I swear to God, without meaning to, I just watched Mandy, Pig, every film. I was oh, it's Oregon again. Yeah. Oh, it's Oregon. And I was what are you trying to tell me about the place I live? Am I going to become a serial killer?
Maybe that speaks directly to the horror community, the horror minded, and that we take comfort in that. We revel in it. We kind of roll around and we're happy in it. I know people that take a picture of them flipping off the sum every day of summer because they don't like it. And I say this all the time about Portland, is that if you stick your niche flag deep enough and loud enough, your people will come find you. Portland is a city full of doers. People want to go do stuff and make things. And if the thing that you want to go do and enjoy isn't there, then you find a small group of people and you guys make it. I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about some of the icons of Oregon horror culture. Since we're already talking about the subject, you've been on a campaign to get today, October 9th, designated as Tarantula Ghoul Day in Portland. Who the heck is Tarantula Ghoul?
Tarantula Ghoul, also known as Suzanne Waldron, she is Portland's first television horror host.
Huh.
She is the second female horror host in the world, only behind Vampira. And side note, Vampira, whose show is very famous and filmed down in LA, she is Astoria High School class of 1939.
What?
So Vampira is a Oregonian as well. We own her. But Tarantula Ghoul,
we don't own anyone, but guess what, Jack?
the character is ours.
Yeah, but you know what also? I didn't know this. I just found out. So I grew up in LA, and for me, it was Elvira. That's who was like our horror character. And she moved up here.
Cassandra Peterson lives here now
can't
too. So we've got
Yeah.
all the spooky ladies.
We got Elvira, we got Vampira, and now you're going to tell me about Tarantula Ghoul.
Tarantula Ghoul, she hosted KPTV Channel 12's House of Horror every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. And that ran for 2 years from 1957 to 1959, and it first aired Wednesday, October 9th, 1957. This was when the Shock Package, which was a collection of Universal horror films from the 30s and early 40s, were given to local markets. For us, though, at that time, nothing that went on our local television was recorded. It just went out into the air and it was lost forever. But what we do have is any sort of paper or advertisements. And Tarantula Ghoul as a character was very prolific in, like, she would go to local grocery stores and do signings for kids and give out pumpkins and stuff. And there's a famous story of her being the halftime entertainment at an Oregon State Civil War football game. They carried her out into a coffin at halftime.
That's so cool.
But she had been waiting in the coffin for so long that she fell asleep. So when they carried the coffin out and they knocked on it to get her to come out, she didn't come out, and they freaked out and they like ripped open the thing and they had to wake her up, and she got up and she sang, because Tarantula Ghoul also had 2 novelty songs, 45s, monster novelty songs. She sang a song called King Kong and the Graveyard Rock.
Well, I just found out that John has some of these novelty songs from Tarantula Ghoul. So we're going to play a few of these clips now.
Graveyard Rock, she only does the intro.
Tired of living, want to die? Well, here's a real good reason why.
The Graveyard Rock.
But King Kong, she sings the whole song.
I'm going 8. King Kong!
I just feel like this piece of Portland history shouldn't be forgotten. And to do that, I would love to have it proclaimed, October 9th is Tarantula Ghoul Day.
That's pretty cool. Okay, well, let's take a quick break here, and when we come back, Jack Ruda will be recommending some scary movies shot in Oregon and some Halloween-themed events to check out. This episode of CityCast Portland is brought to you by BetterHelp. We all know October is the season for wearing masks and costumes, but some of us, we feel like we wear a mask and hide more often than we want to, like at work and social settings, around our family. But therapy can help you learn to accept all parts of yourself. People find it helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself, because masks should be for Halloween fun, not for our emotions. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, but you can also switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So take off the mask with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/CityCast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/CityCast.
Hi, this is David Plotz of CityCast. Have you thought about a gift for yourself this year? One that has the power to help you grow and learn and become a better version of yourself? Give yourself the gift of language by getting Babbel. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by language experts, Babbel gets you talking a new language in 3 weeks, because talking is the key to really knowing a language. And that's how Babbel approaches it. It's designed for real conversation. So I have a trip to France planned with my girlfriend. Was it inspired by the Olympics? Yes, it was. And it's given me the chance to revive my old high school French. And it's so fun to catch back up with the vocabulary I'd forgotten, to remember all the food. For example, I'm in a lesson on ingredients, so I'm going to make crepes with butter and sugar. Avec sucre et de beurre salé, on va se régaler. We're going to have a feast. I learned this great new French expression too. J'en ai l'eau à la bouche. That means I have water in the mouth. That means it's mouth-watering. Love it. Love French. Anyway, Babbel gets you talking, and studies from Yale and Michigan State University and other leading universities prove that it works. So here is a special holiday deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast, spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Well, Tarantula Ghoul isn't the only other classic horror presenter in Oregon, as you were mentioning. So who's carrying on the tradition today?
Well, in the 70s, we had down in, I believe, Salem, Victor Ives had Sinister Cinema, which a lot of people will remember because that was televised and captured, and you can find that on YouTube. Today, currently, it's more or less, it's stage, it's live. Anthony Hudson and their character Carla Rossi, the horror clown, do a lot of queer horror presentations and programs, mostly at the Hollywood Theater. A friend of mine, there's a guy who does a YouTube show called Uncle Erie's Fright Show, which, again, it's a classic, really grade Z horror movies from the 70s, and it's just bumpers in it on the beginning and end of each sections. To be honest, the horror host world is still very active, but everybody's moved to YouTube. And it's all there on YouTube, and they'll have their own channels there. Obviously, Sven Gulli on MeTV is the biggest, most classic one that's still currently happening. But here in Portland, it's a little bit quiet right now, and we're definitely due for a resurgence.
Well, you have an entire radio show on X-Ray FM that highlights horror-themed music. Who would say are some of Oregon's best horror-themed bands that people might be able to play this, this time of year, if they're setting up their house for parties or whatever? Do you have any suggestions?
I do. I wrote out to my community just last night because I was thinking, gosh, who's out there? And I got a flood of a list of bands that I can't believe I forgot. But the big ones, the first one that came right off the bat was Anti-World. And Anti-World is a death rock band. The lead singer is Connie. She owns Another State of Mind, which is one of Portland's oldest punk shops here in town. But the one that everyone would definitely, if you're talking about just background music to decorate your house, Portland's Satan's Pilgrims are huge. They're a horror surf band.
Yeah.
And they actually have a 45 that came out in the early 90s for their most famous hit, Goulash, on Estrus Records.
Oh, don't be frightened. I want you to listen to what I have to tell you. Tonight, we will hear about everyone that you have always been terrified of.
and that is a picture of Tarantula Ghoul in a coffin. So it's Satan's Pilgrims with Tarantula Ghoul. It's like the most Portland horror thing in the world. And I almost framed my copy, but then I wouldn't be able to play it, so I didn't frame it.
Oh, I'm looking at it right now. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I'm finally seeing a picture of Tarantula Ghoul. She looks like what Lydia from Beetlejuice.
The Edward Gorey drawings is what that looked back in the 50s. That's what they had to go off of.
Oh.
If you look at the back cover of my new orange Halloween zine, that's a picture from Portland State University's yearbook.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's amazing because it's like these two normie
Yeah, that's the thing, is that the kids threw this dance and they invited her, and all the pictures is her standing there looking very unhappy to be there, but that was her character. So I have a friend who writes for the zine also, who's a Tarantula Ghoul fanatic, and he's like digging up and finding all these old local yearbooks from the 50s because she's in them, just showing up at things at the kids' like events.
It's so funny because when you brought her up, I just thought it was gonna be kind of like this corny, like 50s, like, oh, I'm so scary. But I'm like, no, she just looks like a hot goth girl. Like, it's awesome.
No, which for the time frame was like really, really like out there and progressive, definitely.
That's so funny. All right. Well, we can't talk about like horror culture without, of course, getting into some of the classic films that you were kind of mentioning, that they were filmed here in Oregon. Like, what are your top 3 most iconic Oregon horror films that people should be checking out?
I would definitely say Significant Others, Dr. Giggles, and Frankie Valli's 1982 Blood Song, where he kills people with a forklift down in Coos Bay.
Wait, Frankie Valli? Like the Frankie Valli?
Yeah, he plays a plastic recorder before he kills everyone.
Wait, I'm sorry. What?
Yep, it's as bonkers as it sounds. It's called Blood Song.
Blood Song. Does he do it while he's doing his like falsetto? Because that's scary.
No, he's super intense and weird, and it's him the whole time, so it's even more unsettling.
Dude, you know what's crazy? It's like it's been scrubbed or something. Like I cannot find one picture. Wait, what's Significant Other about again?
Significant Other is a couple who go to the coast and they're like camping in the woods there. And then it's kind of a did they, didn't they? And I don't want to say more than that because it's got a lot of twists and it's very kind of, you don't know what's happening until it's happened.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, that's 2022. That's a recent one.
Okay. I'm going to check that one out. I also was curious, like, are there any events that you recommend taking place this month for like anyone who wants to dip into your 24/7 365 world?
There's a lot going on just off the top of my head. So tonight and tomorrow is the Stage Fright Film Festival, which started on the 3rd of October. That's out in Milwaukee, and that is live stage, like radio plays and talk shows, and it's just a variety show that goes on for 10 days, and it is amazing. You can find that at stagefrightfestival.com. On the 19th, there's some music things too. Let's see, we got the Mummies are playing, which is my all-time favorite.
Really? Sorry.
No.
Oh, if you don't know who the Mummies are, they're a really cool. Why don't you explain?
Yeah, well, the Mummies have an annual Halloweenish show here at Dante's, and it's October 19th this year. The Mummies are 90s lo-fi budget rock, garage rock. I think a couple of the members live here, a couple of members are down in LA, but it is just like old like organ and screaming guitar rock, and they are just sloppy mess and the most fun you'll ever see a live band. They get up on stage in probably the stinkiest, filthiest zip up the back mummy costumes.
Yeah.
And it's just an intense night of garage rock. It's fantastic. The Mummies.
Yeah, it looks like they haven't washed those costumes since the 90s.
On the 26th, there's always one big night where you have to pick and choose as a Halloween fan. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on in Portland. On the 26th of October, Weird War, who's a great group of people who present horror and like kind of metal dungeon synth kind of stuff. At Hollywood Theater, they're presenting a 35 millimeter, I think, of Pumpkinhead, which is one of my favorite movies. And they're going to have a pumpkin carving contest on stage before and after the showing. Then we have the Ghost Story is happening at the Old Church on the 24th. Which is just a weird like live thing again, to where there's like authors and music and vendors, and That's a fantastic show as well. That's coming up. That's just kind of what I have off the top of my head without looking at notes.
Nice. Well, speaking of ghost stories, I was reading in I think it's this year's Stapled Spine, the Horrigan Halloween episode. What am I saying? The horror
I do that
Halloween.
too. It's okay.
The horror Halloween issue.
Mhm.
I think you dip into a ghost story.
That's actually, I am lucky enough. I'll do the interviews, but most of the pieces, like this one that you're talking about, The Haunting on Killingsworth, was written by Bruce Haney, who lives out in Oregon City, and he's written a number of books on the history of Portland.
My question to you is, like, do you have any favorite, like, spooky ghost stories about Portland? Like, is there, like, one story that you heard that you're like, this is, like, the creepiest one? Can you share it with us?
I have one that actually happened to me. A few years back, I was working as a bartender at the Rialto off-track betting parlor down on 4th and Alder, I believe. And we had just reopened the basement area that had been sealed since the 70s, which became the Jack London Bar, which is a big jazz spot now. But before that opened up, I was down there during the day before the bar was open, like, 10 in the morning to like 2 in the afternoon. It was so dark down there. We had just one light on where I was painting the wall, and I'd be down there by myself, and it's a large basement level of that building. And that building's had a number of fires, and it's, been a pretty rugged halfway house, but it's got a rough history, that building does. And I would be down there facing the wall that I'm painting, and I have my back to the darkness, and I would hear the very recognizable sound of bare feet shuffling behind me in the darkness on the wood panel floors. And I would keep turning around really quick to see if maybe a barback was down there or if someone else came down to get supplies. And there was never anyone else down there with me that I could see. But I would just be interrupted nonstop by things shifting behind me, and there would be shuffling of feet. And that stuck with me. I mean, I can't be in like a basement dark area without listening for someone walking around. I mean, it was very, very intense. And I mean, of course, this is a town with like Shanghai tunnels and just a history of gnarly subterranean things happening. But the invisible shuffling feet, bare feet in the Rialto is something that got me pretty heavily.
I mean, I don't know if I go back down there. If that happened to me once.
It has to be very well lit and very loud. And yeah.
Did that happen to you multiple times, or did it happen once and you're like, never again?
No, it happened once and I was done. That's why I stuck it out and got all the painting done, because I didn't want to go down there anymore. I was like, can't we just turn on some lights? And they're like, well, they weren't set up yet. So I had like a plugged in spot lamp that was just on the wall where I was painting.
That's so scary. Oh, man. Well, Jack, thank you so much for taking the time and hanging out with me and going through, your work and what you're doing, and also just the history and like the culture that is horror here in Oregon, which Horrigan, it's kind of hard to say.
Oregon, we're proud Oregonians.
It's just so close to something else that I'm just like.
I know. Land of the tree and home of the grave. That's what we say.
And just a quick correction before we leave. The reason I wasn't able to find anything about Frankie Valli's appearance in Bloodsong during the interview is because he wasn't in it. Jack Rudo actually meant to say Frankie Avalon, who famously sang the song Venus. Now, I don't know why, but that's even creepier. And yes, Bloodsong was all shot along the Central Oregon coast. So I will definitely be checking that one out, because that whole premise sounds insane. Well, that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.